The wind cut through her thin sweater like a knife, making her pull her arms tighter around her body. Maya sat on the cold metal bench at the bus stop, watching her breath turn into small white clouds that disappeared as quickly as they formed. Her fingers had gone numb 20 minutes ago, but she had nowhere else to go. At 23, she felt like she was carrying the weight of the world on her shoulders. Just 3 weeks ago, she had a job at the local grocery store, a tiny apartment that she shared with 2 roommates, and hopes that things would get better. Now she had none of those things. The grocery store had closed down without warning, leaving all the workers without jobs or their last paycheck. Her roommates couldn't cover her share of the rent, and the landlord wasn't interested in sob stories about closed businesses. The eviction notice was still crumpled in her backpack, along with everything else she owned. 2 changes of clothes, a toothbrush, her phone charger, and $17 in cash. That was it. That was all she had left from 23 years of life. The bus stop had become her thinking spot over the last few days. It wasn't warm, but it had a roof and walls on 3 sides that blocked some of the December wind. More importantly, it was free. She didn't need to buy anything to sit there, and nobody asked questions. The security guard at the mall had already kicked her out twice for loitering, and the coffee shop only let her stay if she bought something every hour. She watched the people walking by, all bundled up in thick coats and scarves, carrying shopping bags or hurrying home from work. A woman in a business suit talked loudly on her phone about dinner plans. A man in a construction jacket climbed into a pickup truck, cranking up the heat so high that Maya could see the warm air escaping when he opened the door. A group of teenagers laughed as they headed toward the movie theater, complaining about having to wait until Friday to get their allowances. Maya tried to remember what it felt like to worry about normal things like what to have for dinner or whether she had enough money for a movie ticket. Those problems seemed like luxuries now. Her stomach had been empty since yesterday afternoon, when she'd spent her last $5 on a small bag of chips and a bottle of water. The $17 she had left needed to last as long as possible, which meant no food today. She pulled out her phone to check the time, even though she'd done the same thing 5 minutes earlier. The battery was down to 30%, and she needed to save it in case of emergencies. Not that she had anyone to call. Her parents lived 3 states away and didn't know about her situation. They thought she was doing fine, working at the store and splitting rent with roommates. The last time they'd talked, her mom had been so proud that Maya was making it on her own in the big city. How could she call now and admit that she was homeless and hungry? Her best friend from high school lived across the country, and they'd grown apart over the years anyway. The roommates she'd lived with were nice enough, but they weren't really friends. They'd divided up her security deposit to help cover the next month's rent and hadn't heard from her since she moved out. The few people she'd worked with at the grocery store were dealing with their own problems now that they were all unemployed. A city bus pulled up to the stop, and Maya automatically reached for her pocket before remembering she was trying to save money. The bus fare was $2.50. If she got on, where would she go? She couldn't afford to go anywhere that cost money, and she couldn't stay anywhere for free. At least the bus would be warm for a while, but eventually she'd have to get off and she'd be $2.50 poorer. She watched the other passengers get on. An older man with a cane moved slowly up the steps. A woman with 2 young children guided them to seats in the front. A teenager with a backpack probably heading home from school. All of them had somewhere to go, someone waiting for them, a place to sleep tonight. The bus pulled away, and Maya was alone again. The bench felt even colder now that she'd imagined the warmth inside the bus. She tried to think practically about her next move. The public library would be open for another 4 hours. She could go there and use the internet for free, maybe. Look at job postings or figure out what services were available for people in her situation. But she'd been there every day this week, and she was starting to get looks from the librarians. The homeless shelter on the other side of town would have beds available, but she'd have to get there by 6 o'clock, and that meant spending money on bus fare or walking for 2 hours in the cold. Yesterday she'd made the walk, but when she got there, she found out she needed 3 forms of identification and proof that she'd lived in the city for at least 6 months. She had her driver's license, but her other ID was in her apartment. When she got evicted and she didn't have anything to prove how long she'd lived in the city, a group of office workers walked by, chatting about their plans for the weekend. One of them dropped a crumpled dollar bill without noticing. Maya stared at it lying there on the sidewalk just 10 feet away. A month ago, she wouldn't have given it a second thought. Now, that dollar represented almost 6% of everything she owned. She waited until the group was out of sight, then casually walked over and picked it up, trying to look like she was just cleaning up litter. $18 now, still not enough for a meal and a place to sleep, but enough for a cup of coffee and a few hours of warmth. She sat back down on the bench and tried to make a plan. Coffee shop until they closed at 9, then maybe she could find a 24-hour laundromat where she could sit until morning. She'd done that 2 nights ago, pretending to wait for her clothes to dry while actually just trying to stay warm and safe. The digital sign at the bus stop showed that the next bus wouldn't arrive for 38 minutes. That was fine with Maya. She wasn't waiting for the bus anyway, she was just waiting, period. Waiting for an idea, waiting for luck to change, waiting for something to happen that would give her a reason to believe tomorrow might be different from today. A car drove by playing music loud enough that she could hear it through the closed windows. For a moment it reminded her of driving around with friends in high school, when their biggest worry was whether they had enough gas money to get to the mall. She closed her eyes and tried to remember what it felt like to be that carefree, but the memory felt like it belonged to someone else. When she opened her eyes, the sun was starting to set, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink. It was beautiful, and Maya realized she hadn't noticed a sunset in weeks. When she was working and living in the apartment, she was always too busy or too tired to pay attention to things like sunsets. Now she had nothing but time, and even something as simple as watching the sky change colors felt like a small gift. The temperature was dropping as darkness approached, and Maya knew she needed to make a decision soon about where to spend the night. But for now she just sat on the bench watching the sunset and trying to hold on to the idea that tomorrow might bring something better. Maya was staring at her hands, trying to rub some warmth back into her fingers, when she felt a gentle tug on her sleeve. She looked down, expecting to see that her jacket had gotten caught on something, but instead found herself looking into the biggest brown eyes she had ever seen. A little girl stood beside the bench, barely tall enough to reach Maya's elbow. She couldn't have been more than 4 or 5 years old, with dark hair that looked like it hadn't been brushed in days and a pink dress that was way too thin for the cold weather. What struck Maya most was how quiet the child was. Most kids that age would be running around or talking loudly, but this little one just stood there, looking up at Maya with those enormous eyes. "Hi there," Maya said softly, glancing around to see where the child's parents might be. The bus stop was empty except for the 2 of them, and the sidewalk beyond was nearly deserted as the evening grew darker. "Are you okay, sweetie?" The little girl didn't answer right away. She just kept staring at Maya with an expression that seemed far too serious for someone so young. Maya could see that the child was shivering, her small arms wrapped around herself in exactly the same way Maya had been holding herself just moments before. "Are you cold?" Maya asked, and the little girl nodded slowly. Without thinking, Maya started to take off her thin sweater, then stopped. She only had 2 layers, and if she gave one away, she'd be even colder than she already was. But looking at this tiny child in nothing but a summer dress, Maya couldn't help herself. She pulled the sweater over her head and gently put it around the little girl's shoulders. The sweater hung down to the child's knees like a dress, and her small hands disappeared completely inside the sleeves. But Maya could see her stop shivering almost immediately, and that made the cold air hitting Maya's own arms feel worth it. "What's your name?" Maya asked, sitting forward on the bench so she was closer to the child's eye level. "Lily," the little girl whispered, her voice so quiet that Maya had to lean in to hear her. "That's a beautiful name. I'm Maya. Where are your mom and dad, Lily?" The question seemed to make the child even more serious, if that was possible. She looked down at her feet, which Maya now noticed were in worn-out sneakers with holes in the toes. No socks, no warm clothes, no coat. This little girl was dressed like it was summer in the middle of December. "My mommy went away," Lily said finally, still not looking up. "She got really sick and had to go to the hospital, and then the doctors said she went to heaven to be with the angels." Maya felt her heart drop into her stomach. This child had lost her mother. No wonder she looked so sad and serious. "I'm so sorry, sweetie. That must be very hard." Who's taking care of you now? Grandma was, Lily said, finally looking up again. But then Grandma fell down in the kitchen and couldn't get up. The ambulance people came and took her away too. They said she had to go to the hospital, but they wouldn't let me go with her. Maya's mind was racing. This child was alone, completely alone. When did your grandma go to the hospital? I don't know. Maybe yesterday? Or the day before. I've been really hungry, and I didn't want to stay in the apartment by myself anymore because it was scary and dark. Maya looked around again, this time more urgently. Where were the social workers? The police? How was a 4-year-old child wandering around the city by herself with no one looking for her? Lily, where have you been sleeping? In the apartment at first, but I ate all the crackers Grandma had, and the light stopped working. Then I came outside because I remembered Mommy used to say that when you need help, you should find a nice lady to talk to. I've been looking for a nice lady, but most of them walk away when I try to talk to them. Maya's throat felt tight. This little girl had been surviving on her own for days, maybe longer. She was hungry, cold, and completely alone in the world, and she'd approached other people for help only to be ignored or avoided. You said most ladies walk away, Maya said carefully. What about me? Why did you come talk to me? Lily tilted, her head to one side, considering the question with the seriousness that seemed to be her normal expression. Because you looked sad like me. And because you were sitting by yourself too. And because... She paused as if trying to find the right words. Because you have kind eyes. Mommy always said I should look for people with kind eyes. Maya felt tears starting to form, but she blinked them away. This wasn't the time to cry. This little girl needed help, and Maya might be the only person who was actually paying attention to her. But what could she do? She barely had enough money to take care of herself, let alone a child. Are you hungry, Lily? Maya asked, even though she already knew the answer. The little girl nodded eagerly, the first real emotion Maya had seen from her besides sadness. I'm really, really hungry. I found some bread in a trash can yesterday, but it was all moldy and gross. Maya reached into her pocket and felt the crumpled bills there. $18. Barely enough for a meal for herself, let alone both of them. But looking at this tiny child who had been eating out of trash cans, Maya knew she couldn't think about herself right now. Okay, she said, standing up from the bench. Let's go get you something to eat. Lily's face lit up with the first smile Maya had seen from her. It was like watching the sun come out from behind clouds. Really? You'll help me? Of course I'll help you, Maya said, taking the child's small hand in hers. That's what people do. We help each other. As they started walking toward the nearest fast food restaurant, Lily kept talking as if Maya's kindness had unlocked something inside her that had been holding back all her words. I was really scared, she admitted. I didn't know what to do when Grandma fell down. I tried to help her get up, but she was too heavy and she kept saying words I couldn't understand. Then the ambulance came, but they said little kids couldn't ride in ambulances unless they were hurt too. Maya squeezed the little hand gently. You were very brave, Lily. You did exactly the right thing by coming to find help. I was hoping maybe I could find a new mommy, Lily said quietly, since mine had to go to heaven. Do you think there are any mommies who might want a little girl like me? The question hit Maya like a physical blow. Here was this sweet, intelligent, brave little girl asking if anyone would want her, as if she was something that might be unwanted, as if her worth was something to be questioned. Oh, sweetie, Maya said, stopping right there on the sidewalk and kneeling down so she was eye level with Lily. Any mommy would be so lucky to have a little girl like you. You're smart and brave and kind. Don't you ever think that you're not wanted, okay? Lily looked at Maya with those big brown eyes, and for the first time since they'd met, she looked hopeful instead of just sad. Do you really think so? I know so, Maya said firmly. And as they continued walking toward the restaurant, Maya realized that something had changed inside her. For the first time in weeks, she wasn't thinking about her own problems. She was thinking about how to help this little girl who needed her. The fast food restaurant felt like a warm hug after the cold December air. Maya watched Lily's eyes go wide as they looked up at the brightly lit menu board, her small hand still tucked safely in Maya's. The little girl pressed closer to Maya's, sighed, overwhelmed by the sounds and smells and warm yellow light. "What would you like to eat?" Maya asked, kneeling down beside Lily. She had counted her money 3 times on the walk over. $18. Enough for a kid's meal and maybe something small for herself if she was careful. "I don't know," Lily whispered, staring at the pictures of burgers and chicken nuggets like they were treasures in a museum. "Mommy used to get me the ones that look like little dinosaurs, but I don't see those." "Chicken nuggets," Maya said with a smile. "They still taste the same, even if they're not dinosaur-shaped. Do you want those?" Lily nodded eagerly, then suddenly looked worried. "But I don't have any money. Grandma always said you need money to buy food." "Don't worry about that," Maya said, her heart breaking a little more. This child was 4 years old and already worried about money. "I've got it covered." They got in line behind a family with 2 kids who were complaining loudly about wanting ice cream with their dinner. Maya watched the parents handle the situation with practiced ease, promising ice cream later if the kids ate their vegetables first. It was such a normal family scene, the kind Maya used to take for granted when she saw it every day. "Maya?" Lily's quiet voice brought her back to the present. "Yes, sweetie? Are you my friend now?" The question was so simple and honest that Maya felt tears start to form again. "Yes, Lily. I'm your friend." "Good," Lily said, swinging Maya's hand a little. "I haven't had a friend in a long time, not since Mommy got sick." When they reached the counter, Maya ordered a kid's meal with chicken nuggets, apple slices, and milk for Lily, and just a small coffee for herself. The total came to $7.43, leaving her with just over $10. She tried not to think about how that money would have to last who knows how long. They found a booth in the corner, away from the busiest part of the restaurant. Lily climbed up onto the plastic seat, Maya's sweater still wrapped around her like a blanket, and stared at the food like she couldn't believe it was real. "Go ahead," Maya encouraged. "Eat." Lily didn't need to be told twice. She ate like she hadn't seen food in days, which Maya realized was probably close to the truth. She ate every single nugget, every apple slice, and drank all of her milk. Then, she looked up at Maya with a milk mustache and smiled. "That was the best food ever," she said. "Thank you." Maya sipped her coffee and watched Lily play with the small toy that had come with her meal. It was a little plastic car, nothing fancy, but Lily seemed delighted with it. She made soft car noises as she drove it around the table, completely absorbed in her game. "Lily," Maya said gently, not wanting to break the peaceful moment but knowing they needed to talk. "We need to figure out what to do next. You can't just wander around the city by yourself. It's not safe." Lily stopped playing and looked up with those serious brown eyes again. "I know. Mommy always said I should never talk to strangers, but I didn't know what else to do. Everyone I'm supposed to talk to went away." Maya took a deep breath. She knew what the right thing to do was. She should call the police or social services. They would know how to help Lily properly. They could find out about her grandmother, get her into the system, make sure she was taken care of by people who actually had the resources to help a child. But the thought of handing Lily over to strangers made Maya's chest feel tight. What if they separated them? What if Lily ended up in a foster home with people who didn't understand how special she was? What if she got lost in the system and nobody paid attention to her the way Maya was paying attention to her right now? "Maya?" Lily's voice was very small. "Can I ask you something?" "Of course. Do you think maybe you could be my new mommy?" The words hit Maya like a lightning bolt. She stared at this little girl who had lost everything, who had been surviving on her own for days, who had approached stranger after stranger looking for help. And now she was asking Maya, who had nothing to offer except a kind heart and $10 in her pocket, to be her mother. "Lily," Maya said carefully, "being someone's mommy is a very big responsibility. Mommies have to have houses and jobs and money to buy food and clothes and medicine when you get sick. I don't have any. of those things right now. Lily considered this seriously the way she seemed to consider everything. But you bought me food when I was hungry, and you gave me your sweater when I was cold, and you have kind eyes like Mommy said to look for. Isn't that what mommies do? Maya felt like her heart might burst. This child had just described exactly what being a parent meant, stripped down to its most basic truth. It wasn't about having the perfect house or the perfect job. It was about putting someone else's needs before your own. It was about kindness and protection and love. You're right, Maya said softly. That is what mommies do. So will you, please? Lily reached across the table and took Maya's hand in both of her tiny ones. I promise I'll be good. I won't ask for toys or candy or anything expensive. I just want someone to take care of me. And I want to take care of you too, because you look lonely like I feel lonely. Maya looked down at their joined hands. Lily's were so small and warm, and they held on to Maya's like she was afraid Maya might disappear. And maybe Maya was afraid of the same thing. Maybe they were both afraid of being alone again. It's not that simple, sweetie, Maya said, though her resolve was cracking with every word. There are rules about these things, legal things. I would need to talk to people and fill out paperwork and— But you want to, don't you? Lily interrupted, and her voice was so hopeful that Maya couldn't bring herself to lie. Yes, Maya admitted. I want to. More than anything, I want to. Lily's smile was brighter than all the lights in the restaurant. Then we'll figure out the other stuff together. That's what families do, right? They figure things out together. Maya laughed despite everything, because this 4-year-old was making more sense than most adults Maya knew. Yes, that's exactly what families do. So we're a family now? Maya looked at this brave little girl who had somehow found her way to exactly the right person at exactly the right moment. Neither of them had anything in the traditional sense. No home, no money, no security. But they had found each other, and maybe that was everything. Yes, Maya said, squeezing Lily's hands. We're a family now. Lily launched herself around the table and into Maya's arms, hugging her tight, and sitting there in that fast food restaurant, with $10 in her pocket and no idea where they would sleep that night. Maya felt richer than she ever had in her life, because for the first time in months, she had a purpose. She had someone who needed her, someone who believed in her, someone who thought she was capable of being everything they needed. They were going to figure this out together, one day at a time. The first night together was the hardest thing Maya had ever done. They ended up at a 24-hour laundromat 6 blocks away from the restaurant, where Maya pretended to wash clothes she didn't have while Lily curled up on the plastic chair beside her. The little girl fell asleep quickly, exhausted from days of being scared and alone. But Maya stayed awake all night watching over her and planning their next move. When morning came, Maya knew they needed help, and they needed it fast. She couldn't keep pretending to do laundry forever, and Lily would need real meals and a safe place to sleep. More importantly, Maya realized that loving this child wasn't enough if she couldn't provide for her properly. Their first stop was the hospital where Lily's grandmother had been taken. Maya carried Lily on her hip as they walked through the long white corridors, following signs to the information desk. The receptionist, a kind woman with gray hair and tired eyes, listened patiently as Maya explained their situation. The patient you're asking about is in room 314, she said after checking her computer. But visiting hours don't start until 10 and only family members are allowed. I'm her granddaughter, Lily said quietly from Maya's arms, speaking for the first time since they'd entered the hospital. Is Grandma okay? The receptionist's expression softened immediately. She's stable, sweetheart. She had what we call a stroke, which means her brain got a little confused for a while, but she's getting better every day. Maya felt a wave of relief wash over her. At least Lily still had someone in the world besides Maya. They spent the next hour sitting in the waiting room, playing quiet games with Lily's toy car until visiting hours began. Grandma Rose was sitting up in her hospital bed when they walked into room 314, and her face lit up the moment she saw Lily. My baby girl, she whispered. her words coming out slow and a little slurred but full of love. "I've been so worried about you." Lily ran to the bed and carefully climbed up beside her grandmother, gentle in the way that children somehow know how to be around people who are fragile. "I'm okay, Grandma. Maya took care of me." Rose looked at Maya then, really looked at her, taking in her worn clothes and tired face and the way she stood protectively close to Lily's side of the bed. "Thank you," she said simply. "Thank you for keeping her safe." Maya sat down in the chair beside the bed and explained everything that had happened since Lily had found her at the bus stop. She told Rose about their night at the laundromat, about the promise she'd made to Lily, about how desperately she wanted to help, but how little she had to offer. "I know I'm not the ideal person to take care of a child," Maya said, her voice shaking a little. "I don't have a job or a home or any money, but I love her already and I think she needs someone who won't give up on her." Rose listened carefully, occasionally reaching over to stroke Lily's hair as the little girl dozed against her shoulder. When Maya finished talking, Rose was quiet for a long moment. "You know," she said finally, "I've been lying here for 3 days thinking about what would happen to Lily if something happened to me. I'm 78 years old and this stroke was a warning. I might not always be able to take care of her the way she deserves." Maya waited, not sure what Rose was trying to say. "But you," Rose continued, looking directly at Maya, "you found her when she was lost and scared, and you didn't walk away. You spent your last dollar to feed her. You stayed up all night to keep her safe. That tells me everything I need to know about who you are." Over the next several hours, Rose helped Maya figure out the first steps toward making their family official. She called her lawyer from the hospital phone and explained the situation. She contacted the social services office and asked them to send someone to meet with Maya. She even called her bank to ask about accessing some money she'd been saving for Lily's future. The social worker who came to meet them was a woman named Jennifer, who looked like she'd seen every possible family situation during her 20 years on the job. She interviewed Maya for over an hour, asking about her background, her plans, her living situation, her ability to provide for a child. Maya was honest about everything. She told Jennifer about losing her job and her apartment, about having no family support, about the $18 that was now down to $3. She explained that she had no experience raising children, but that she'd do whatever it took to learn. "This is highly unusual," Jennifer said when Maya finished. "Typically, we don't place children with adults who are themselves homeless and unemployed." Maya's heart sank, but Jennifer held up a hand to stop her from speaking. "However," she continued, "I've been doing this job for 2 decades and I've learned that sometimes the best families don't look like what we expect them to look like. What I see here is a child who was in crisis and an adult who stepped up to help her without asking for anything in return. That's exactly the kind of person we want taking care of children." Jennifer explained that the process would take time. Maya would need to find stable housing and employment. She'd have to complete background checks and parenting classes and regular home visits. But Jennifer was willing to work with them to make it happen, especially since Rose was supportive and could serve as a reference and support system. "In the meantime," Jennifer said, "I'm going to arrange for emergency temporary custody. That means Lily can stay with you legally while we work through all the paperwork. There's a transitional housing program for families in crisis that might be able to help you get started." As they left the hospital that afternoon, Maya felt like they were walking into a completely different world than the one they'd woken up in. They had a plan now. They had people helping them. Most importantly, they had hope. The transitional housing turned out to be a small apartment with basic furniture and a kitchenette. It wasn't fancy, but it had heat and running water and a real bed for Lily to sleep in. The program would give them 3 months to get established, and Maya was determined not to waste a single day. She spent that first week applying for jobs, any jobs. She filled out applications at grocery stores and restaurants and cleaning companies. She signed up for every assistance program Jennifer recommended. She researched online parenting courses and started reading library books about child development. But the most important thing she did that week was simply be present for Lily. She learned that Lily liked to have her back rubbed when she couldn't fall asleep. She discovered that the little girl was afraid of loud noises but loved to sing quiet songs. She found out that Lily was incredibly smart and could already read simple words that her mother had taught her. Every night, as Maya tucked Lily into their shared bed, the little girl would look up at her with those big brown eyes and say, "Thank you for being my mommy, Maya." And every night Maya would reply, "Thank you for being my daughter, Lily." They were building something together, one day at a time. It wasn't the family either of them had started with, but it was theirs, and that made it perfect. 6 months later, Maya stood in the doorway of their small but cozy apartment watching Lily color at the kitchen table. The little girl had grown so much since that cold December night at the bus stop. Her hair was longer now and always brushed, pulled back with colorful hair ties that she picked out herself at the store. She wore a bright yellow dress that actually fit her properly, and her feet were in sturdy shoes with no holes. But the biggest change wasn't in how Lily looked. It was in how she acted. The serious, worried expression that had seemed permanently carved into her 4-year-old face had been replaced by the natural curiosity and joy that children were supposed to have. She laughed easily now, asked a million questions about everything she saw, and had opinions about what she wanted for breakfast and which book she wanted to read at bedtime. "Maya, look," Lily called out, holding up her drawing. "I made a picture of our family." Maya walked over to see the artwork, which was taped to several pieces of paper to make it big enough for everyone Lily considered family. There was Maya, drawn with long brown hair and a big smile, holding hands with a smaller figure in a yellow dress that was obviously Lily. Next to them was Grandma Rose, sitting in what looked like a wheelchair but with a crown on her head because, as Lily had explained before, grandmas were like queens. "It's beautiful," Maya said, meaning it completely. "Should we hang it on the refrigerator with the others?" Lily nodded enthusiastically and helped Maya tape the drawing to the front of their small refrigerator, which was already covered with similar masterpieces. Their little apartment might not have been fancy, but it was full of color and life and love. The journey to get here hadn't been easy. Those first few weeks in transitional housing had been some of the hardest of Maya's life. She'd wake up every morning at 5:30 to get ready for her new job at the diner downtown, where she worked the breakfast and lunch shifts. The work was exhausting, standing on her feet for 8 hours straight, carrying heavy plates and dealing with difficult customers. But it paid enough to cover their basic expenses, and her boss, Mrs. Chen, had been understanding when Maya needed to leave for meetings with social workers or court appointments. The hardest part had been leaving Lily during the day. Maya had found a daycare center that accepted children on government assistance. But dropping off this little girl who had already lost so much felt like tearing her own heart out every single morning. For the first month, Lily would cry when Maya left and run to hug her legs when she came to pick her up, as if she'd been afraid Maya might not come back. But slowly, things had gotten easier. Lily made friends at daycare and started talking excitedly about the games they played and the songs they sang. Maya got better at her job and even started earning tips from regular customers who remembered how she liked her coffee. They established routines that made both of them feel secure. Every Tuesday, they visited Grandma Rose, who was now living in a care facility where she could get the help she needed after her stroke. Rose was doing much better, though she still moved slowly and sometimes had trouble finding the right words. But her mind was sharp, and she loved hearing about everything Lily was learning and all the progress Maya was making. "You know," Rose had said during one of their recent visits, "I used to worry that I was too old to give Lily everything she needed. But watching you two together, I realized that love and commitment matter so much more than anything else." The legal process had taken longer than Maya expected, but Jennifer, their social worker, had been patient and supportive through every step. Maya had completed all the required parenting classes, where she learned everything from child development to how to handle tantrums to the importance of reading together every day. She'd passed all her background checks and home inspections. Most importantly, she'd proven that she could provide a stable, loving home for Lily. Last month, they'd finally had their court date for the official adoption. Maya had worn the nicest outfit she owned, which she'd bought from a thrift store specifically for the occasion. Lily had worn a blue dress that Grandma Rose had picked out for her, and she'd carried a small bouquet of flowers that Maya's coworkers at the diner had surprised her with. The judge, a kind older man with gray hair and gentle eyes, had asked Lily if she understood what adoption meant. "It means Maya gets to be my real mommy forever and always," Lily had said confidently. "And I get to be her real daughter forever and always, and nobody can take us away from each other." When the judge signed the papers and declared that the adoption was official, Maya had cried harder than she'd ever cried in her life. But they were happy tears, the kind that come when something you've dreamed about for so long finally becomes real. Now, watching Lily carefully choose which crayons to use for her next masterpiece, Maya marveled at how much their lives had changed. They had their own apartment now, a real lease with both their names on it. Maya had been promoted to assistant manager at the diner, which came with better pay and health insurance for both of them. Lily was enrolled in kindergarten for the fall, and she was so excited about learning to read chapter books that she practiced writing her letters every day. But more than all the practical improvements, they had something that neither of them had been sure they'd ever have again. They had each other. They had someone to come home to every day, someone to share meals with, someone to tell about the good things and the bad things that happened. They had inside jokes and favorite songs and traditions that belonged just to them. "Maya," Lily said, suddenly, looking up from her coloring. "Do you remember that night when we met at the bus stop?" "Of course I do," Maya said, sitting down beside her at the table. "How could I forget? I was so scared that night I thought maybe nobody would ever want to take care of me again. But then you gave me your sweater and you bought me chicken nuggets, and you said we could be a family." Lily paused in her coloring and looked directly at Maya. "I'm glad I was brave enough to ask you to be my mommy." Maya reached over and tucked a strand of hair behind Lily's ear. "I'm glad you were brave enough too. You know what? Meeting you was the best thing that ever happened to me. Even better than getting your job. Even better than getting my job. Even better than when we got this apartment. Even better than when we got this apartment," Lily giggled. "Even better than chocolate ice cream?" "Well," Maya said, pretending to think very seriously about it. "Maybe not better than chocolate ice cream, but definitely tied for first place." Lily dissolved into laughter, and Maya found herself laughing too. Outside their apartment window, the sun was setting, painting the sky in the same orange and pink colors that Maya remembered from that desperate evening 6 months ago. But everything else had changed completely. That night at the bus stop, Maya had thought she had nothing to offer anyone. She'd been wrong. She'd had the most important thing of all, the willingness to love someone else more than herself. And Lily had taught her that sometimes the most beautiful families aren't the ones that start with perfect circumstances. Sometimes, the most beautiful families are the ones that start with two people who need each other, who choose each other, and who decide to build something wonderful together from absolutely nothing. As they got ready for bed that night, Lily looked up at Maya and smiled. "I love you, Mommy. I love you too, sweetheart. Forever and always."